It's one of those things that as Christians we look forward to. We know the day is coming when Christ will return, establish his kingdom, peace will reign. I remember in high school, maybe, I was maybe 14, 15. I was active in church. I had a friend who would occasionally go to church with me. Their family wasn't really believers. I think they might have given some lip service to Christianity because maybe they were raised that way, but not really believers. And his mom occasionally would talk to me about it. We're driving along, and his mom just goes, hey, Mark, you believe that Jesus is in heaven and one day he's going to come back and make everything right? And I said, yes, ma'am. And she said, well, why doesn't he? I mean, because you look around at all the suffering, you look around at the heartache, you look around at all the problems and the hardships going on in the world, and you just think, why doesn't he come back? And I say, well, he has his reasons, and he'll come back on his time. And she said, well, do you think that if everyone in the world, 6 billion, I think it was at the time, all stood together and said, please come back, would he come back? And I said, no. Because it's not on what we want. It's on his time and his purpose for his reason. See, this is a false view of the return of Christ that I think often is had, that it's just if Jesus would just come back and just establish his kingdom, then everything's just rosy and nice and wonderful, and we would all be great. I don't think that understands why he's coming back and why he is waiting. You ever thought about that? Why is he waiting? Why does Jesus tarry? So what is Jesus going to do when he comes back, and why is he waiting? Those are great questions. I'm glad you asked. Because the Creed just told us. He will come again to judge the living and the dead. That's why he's coming back. To judge. Oh, we don't like hearing about that one, do we? We want to hear about him coming back and making everything all nice and peaceful and joyous and love. The fact is, it says he's coming back to judge the living and the dead. But we look at Jesus' life and his ministry, and what do we see? We see, love your neighbor as yourself. Love your enemy. Bless those who curse you. Do unto others as you would have done unto you. Be humble. Thinking of others as more important than yourselves. We see the healings and the miracles and the sacrifice that he gives. And he says, hey, go live the same way. And we see the compassion that he had, that he is moved by and that he taught. And we see the care that he had and he commands for the least of these. And we think, what a wonderful world that would be if only he would just make the world that way. Then we could all sing Kumbaya and it would all be wonderful. We see these things and we long for them to be made reality. God, that world is so much better than the one we're living in. We want for God's kingdom to come, for his will to be done on earth as it is in heaven. We look around at the suffering and the pain and the hardship and the struggle, and we want God to put an end to it. We want to see a world where the love and the joy and the peace and grace, where that's what reigns. Not all of this pride and hate and selfishness. And so we want Jesus to come back so we can make that world the reality. However, what we often miss in that is that if Jesus is going to come back and put an end to that evil and end to the suffering, he's going to have to deal with the source of that pain and that evil and that suffering. And where does evil and sin and suffering come from? It comes from us. It comes from human beings. We create the evil and the suffering in the world. So in order to establish that world of love and grace and peace, Jesus has to deal with the pride and the selfishness and the sin of mankind. So when he comes back, Jesus is going to come to establish that kingdom. But in the establishing of that kingdom, he also comes to judge.
Lord, though I feel the darkness come, I will not fear. You've ransomed me with blood.